Hi, I'm Maggie,
Hi, I'm Grace, and this is
a very bookish podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to a Very Bookish Podcast. This is episode 25. We are hitting the quarter mark to our 100th episode. And today we have a very special guest. We have our friend and author, Allison, here.
Yes, welcome, Allison. A round of applause.
Thank you for having me.
We're so excited to have you on, especially since you're our first author guest. So we've had guests who are book talkers, cosplayers, bookstagrammers, but we've never had an author on. And so you are our first author, especially an author that I know of, to like be on the podcast. I will have authors that will come on that we probably won't know much about, but we know about because I've been following you for a while now, since Grace has been talking about you, and since Beth talked about your book and stuff. I followed you from that, and we're excited. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so honored that I'm the first author.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's funny because I think I found you one of these days, like scrolling through TikTok, and then I followed you, but then I didn't know that you were an author until like I saw one of your videos where you were talking about your book, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, wow. And then you had followed me back, and I was like, oh gosh, it's happened. So yeah, this is pretty great. It's kind of come full circle now. No.
It's weird because we follow people, and then we asked them to be on the podcast, and we're like, whoa, you actually agreed, and then you follow us back, and we're like, this doesn't feel real.
It's too much.
This is too much for my brain to process at the moment. But yes, thank you. So today we're going to talk a little bit about, as obvious, you've published a book. So we're going to talk about like publishing and what it's like to write a book and kind of like the tips and tricks. So kind of just to start off the episode, can you tell us like how you first decided you wanted to like write a book? Like that first initial, like, was it a dream? Was it like, how did you get the idea to write a book?
Yeah, so I've been writing stories since I learned how to write in kindergarten. And before that, I think I was telling stories through dance and theater and stuff. I just have always really liked storytelling. With Dark Radiance, the idea came from actually car rides with my best friend Lauren. We would drive to play practice. We were in Greece, and I pick her up, and I had a CD because my car didn't have an aux cord at the time. And the very first song on the CD was Angel with a Shotgun by The Cab. And so originally Dark Radiance started off as Seven Deadly Sins Families. That's what I wanted to do. And then it morphed into Liliana's story when I started writing it. So that first chapter, not the prologue, but the chapter, it's pretty much the same chapter that I wrote very first. And then I put the book down and I was like, oh, whatever, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to do something else. And then I worked at Disney World in entertainment, and we would have days that you were either like a sub, so you would go in and you were kind of like on call. So if someone got sick or hurt when you were performing, they'd call you in, and I'd have to get there at around 4:30 a.m. And so I would sit there in like the tunnels of Disney World and I would write. And that's really when I started writing Dark Radiance. I was like, I could write a book. I could do this. And then from there on, it just flourished into what it is today.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then I think that because I think everyone kind of has those moments of like thinking like, yeah, I could write a book, I could do it. And for the most part, people could, but then there's so much behind that it takes like really consistently like sticking to it and like putting what you see in your head on paper. And I feel like every book lover has done it, where they have started writing a book when they were younger and then thought it was going to amount to something, thought they were going to be an author, then put the book down and never touched it again. And I'm speaking from experience because I have done this. And I remember
or people write fan fiction.
Fan fiction too. Everybody does it, but then there aren't that many people who have that kind of storytelling calling very early and kind of stick with it to actually publish a book and do something with it, right? But how, like, you decided that you wanted to start writing it and you had kind of like some pieces there coming together where you decided like I could do this, right? But where was it, what were like your foundations in your writing process? Like what came together first? Was it like Lillian coming first? Was it like the world coming in together first? What solidified it?
So I definitely think Lily came into my mind first. I talk about my characters like they are my children. They are actually humans in the world, and this is just me telling their stories. So I definitely think she came into my mind first, and she was like, "Hey, I'm the main character. I'm gonna tell you this story, and this is this really creepy town called Idlewood, and it's in Colorado, and it's like gothic and all the fun like things that you love." And then I knew the ending, so the end has like a masquerade ball. I knew that it ended in that kind of ball, kind of pretty dresses, all of that. And then as I met each character, I slowly learned the story. And I think I have a very unconventional way of writing because I normally know the beginning and the end, and then they just tell me the rest. The other character that kind of popped up first was Claire Holloway, who is the preacher's daughter who sacrificed herself in the local church. And so it's kind of like this like haunted place that people talk about, and there's lore about her being in Idlewood. So she really came into play too. And I just started, playing with those characters and listening to what they were saying. And that's how I twisted Dark Radiance into like a very like cohesive story.
Yeah. Cause like, well, not many people know about this except for like maybe like four of our friends, but Maggie and I are in the works of writing a story together. Um it's a very it's a slow process. It's a slow process.
I've been in school. I had 18 credit hours this semester, and I had a full, like almost a full. I had a part-time job, and we had the podcast going on, and we both have our own social medias that we run. So it was just like we were waiting till we got both off for the summer because she's a teacher as well. So like we're waiting till this summer to pick it back up. But
Yeah. And like it was crazy because like I think it started because I was talking on one of my live streams one day, and I was talking about like the Night World series by L.J. Smith, which is, it used to be one of my favorite series ever because of like the huge world that it is. It's like that old vampire witches werewolves kind of world, but it's like that whole like secret behind the eyes of human kind of thing. And there's so many different characters. Each book follows a different couple or a different group, but in the last three books it looks like everything is coming together to one thing. And but then the last book never was released. I'm still hurt about that.
20 years later.
So I was talking about that, and I was just like, I wrote a book that was similar to that, but it was wrapping up the last missing piece. And Maggie and I were talking, and she was talking about writing a book too. And then we're just like, you know what? Let's do it together. So we're like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do it out. And I think the first thing that we did was we picked out our two main characters, which are very, very mirroring to each other. So one of our main characters, Victoria, she is very similar to Maggie, and then a character that I wrote, Mireia,
Herself in the story is what we're really.
It's basically that, but that's kind of how you kind of
insert is what we're doing. Honestly, if I'm gonna be 100% honest, like they're like authors like don't like they're like it's kind of like I feel like it's so shamed when like it also comes to like Sarah J. Maas when they're like, oh, she inserted herself as fair, and I'm like, well, I would want to too. Like I want to write a book about myself.
Yeah, I self-insert myself every time. Like I feel like each of my main characters is a little bit of me. Lily is a little bit of me. And then like as I go on, like the newest character I wrote, I was like, oh my gosh, this is mirroring me. I need to like change something. I was like, I'm exposing myself.
Yeah.
That's like the best part of it, and like it was like it came out pretty organically because like the way that we planned out almost the
3
whole
books.
skeleton of 3 books. We're like, this is going to be a 3 books. We're going to have this happen. We're going to have this. And, we saw everything in our minds, but then putting it into words, that's where we hit a roadblock.
I mean, we were going good for a solid like 2 months, and that was while I was on break. And then like I went back to school, and I'm like, I can't. Like I physically cannot. I'd have no more time in my day to like read books for my TikTok, to do the podcast. I mean, the podcast is like, for me, it's like the podcast, and then like also all the social media for the podcast and all the emails and stuff. So it's like 4 to 5 hours weekly, and then editing and posting and stuff for it. And so I'm like, I don't have the time. That's why Grace now runs the podcast TikTok, because I cannot run that. I will not be able to run
that. Yeah. It's like and I don't think that people realize authors have other jobs. At least not the huge authors who have income coming in all the time. But did you ever kind of get through those moments where like you're just like, I can't write right now, I have to focus on other things, I'll come back to it?
Yeah. So when I published Dark Radiance, it was 2019, and I look back at myself and I'm like, I was crazy. I was graduating college. So that like I published Dark Radiance in October. I graduated college in December. And it was just, I don't know how I did it. I also worked. I think that for me, I definitely prioritized writing first, and I knew I wanted to publish Dark Radiance and I wanted to get it out. And I put reading to the back burner. Like, I hadn't read all the popular series. I still haven't read all the popular series that were popular back then, because I came home I used to work at Barnes and Noble. So I would come home from closing at 11 p.m. and then write until 2 a.m., go to bed, be back at the store at 7 a.m.
Oh my God, and I'll be there at 11 a.m. tomorrow. I'm thinking about I have to go to Barnes and Noble at 11 a.m. tomorrow. I'm like,
I loved it. Like, I loved it, and I love that store, and I did my book signing there, and I'll forever be grateful. But oh my gosh, working in a bookstore, sometimes you're like, oh.
I work customer service.
Okay. Yeah, see, our store didn't have, like, you were just a bookseller, so you aren't designated. So some days I was on cash wrap, some days I was on customer service, and some days I'm upstairs, because we had a 2-story store too.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it was planted right in the middle of a really busy mall. So especially during holiday time, crazy.
My like first I started holiday season, so I was at Barnes and Noble December, January, and then I just came back. But they literally like during holiday I was stationed at customer service, because I would literally stand there and there'd be like a long line of people at customer service. Yeah. But like now I'm still like customer service. I just like the YA section and romance is right there, so like that's where like I like meander around, and then fantasy,
hide and wait for people to grab the book that you like.
Or like
that one SpongeBob meme that's just his eyeball watching. That was me.
Yes. Yeah, I do love working. The people I work with are like the best people. But the customers are just sometimes like, you're just like, a customer will ask you for something, and you're like, we don't have that, and they're like, well, can you order it? And you're like, we can't even sell it to you. And they're like, well, can you order it? And I'm like, I can't sell it to, I don't have the ability to sell it to you. They're like, well, can you get it from the publisher? And I'm like, sir.
You're like, yeah, let me just call up Macmillan really quick.
Yeah, let me just call up HarperCollins real quick and like tell.
Can you get this for someone?
Yeah,
it's out of print, but like, can you do this for me?
Yeah, I was like, ma'am, do you think I have that? Do you think I have that much power? If I did, I would not be working at this.
Yeah, there was only like 2 days, or there was like a week and then another day that I was just like out of it. One of them was when Kobe Bryant died. They were coming out with special edition magazines. I answered the phone the entire day being like, no, we don't have the magazine. No, we can't put it on hold for you. That was my whole
Harry
day.
Styles magazine, when that came out, I had teenagers calling me left and right, and I'm like, hi. And it's like a girl's business, like, you looking for the Harry Styles Vogue magazine? They're like, yes. And I'm like, we are sold out. I don't know when we're going to get in more. I can't. Or like customers come up and they're like, I want this. And you're like, we're sold out. I can ship it to the store for you, or you can go to another store. And they're like, well, I don't want that. I want it now. And I'm like, let me just like pull it out my ass for you.
Yeah, it was always just one of those things that I would, when that happened, I like would see like dads come in and they would like look at me and my manager was like, did you just run away from a customer? I was like, I don't want to sell another Kobe Bryant magazine, please don't make me. The other time was when I did my book signing, I had the Barnes and Noble posters all over, but I had to work that week. So the Barnes and Noble poster was standing right there, and I would like turn it away a little bit because like my book is sitting there, and then people would be like, is that you? And I'm like, yes, it's me. And I would get like really awkward because I was like, they're like, oh, what do you write? And I'm like, it's a YA book. Like, it's kind of like the Vampire Diaries meets Twilight meets Hush Hush and like Supernatural all meshed together. And they're like, oh, Twilight. So Twilight. And I'm like, no, but like, sure.
Twilight is an interesting book. So I have like the Tracy Wolf Crave series. That is like Twilight, but I always say it's Twilight, but with fantasy. And what are you doing, Grace?
There was like a little thing.
Oh, okay. I was like, are you like motioning for your brother to like do something? But
no, I'm just kidding.
I think Twilight is so funny because like you say, oh, it's kind of like Twilight but better. I always add that. I'm like, it's Twilight but better because like Twilight is so popular. It's a very popular. So if you like add on like but better, they're like,
it was popular for the time.
Oh,
okay,
yes.
Don't get it twisted because back then it's not as popular as it was back then.
Like,
it was like
my entire Twilight shelf back there that I have like 18 copies. I have a very special like love for Twilight because of my like it's the book that got me back into reading, and I wouldn't be an author today without it. So I have a very special love for it, and I like it's my whole childhood. Like people say like Percy Jackson is their childhood. Mine was Twilight, like every midnight premiere, every book. I went to Breaking Dawn's release. Like that is my childhood. And then the Hunger Games came and I was already a reader. So any Twilight like memorabilia, my grandma or my aunt buys me it and they're like, I want you to have this. And I'm like, thank you. Add it to my billions collection. I'm gonna be like the crazy lady with just Twilight everywhere.
It's so many people started reading because of Twilight. Twilight was the first book I ever read, actually picking it up and reading it. And I've told the story like so many times that like the first time that I actually finished it, like finished a book that I picked up for myself because I wanted to read it, picked it up, read it, and as soon as I finished it, I ran into the living room and like screamed, told my family, like, I finished a book, you know? Twilight will always have a sentimental piece in my heart. The movies as well. Yeah. But would I read it now with the same enthusiasm that I did back then? Probably not.
No, I reread the books right before Midnight Sun came out. And I was like, why did I like Bella? Or why did I like Edward? Like me and Edward would fight. Like I would be the Rosalie of the situation, just like
literally
obstinate. And then I had a weird appreciation for Jacob this next time. And I look at it and I see people who like read it and I don't know.
Don't get me wrong. Midnight Sun was so good compared to like if I were to read Twilight right now, but because the writing style, like she says in the dedication, like it was written for us who wanted it way back then. So the writing style was changed for more of an adult mind. So it read so much easily compared to where if I read Twilight again. I actually did a comparison, side-by-side comparison. I opened up Twilight. I think it was the scene where he takes the bottle cap and they're talking for the first time. And so like her in Twilight, it's like a page of that scene. in his book, it's like 3 pages.
It's just him brooding over every decision. I'm like, bro, get on with it. And that's what, like, I'm scared we're gonna get. That's gonna just be like Asriel's like internal monologue all the time. And I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh.
Oh my god. I actually read the whole I read everything but Breaking Dawn so that I could read Midnight Sun. I refused to read Breaking Dawn after the end of Eclipse. I refused.
My favorite book in the series, but it's fine.
I hated Jacob so much at the end of Eclipse. I hated him with a burning passion. That
I do have to say, I was the same way. But Breaking Dawn, with his point of view, definitely gave me like that appreciation for him when I read it. Even as like 15-year-old me, I was like, wow, I understand Jacob now.
Oh dear. So now I have to read Breaking Dawn is what I'm hearing.
I mean, you don't have to. I have actually, ever since Breaking Dawn has come out, before the movies came out, anything like that, I have always gotten that like, you look like you could be Renesmee Cullen. Someone came up to me in the bookstore and told me this, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to marry someone with the last name Black, and that's just gonna be my life, because my cousin got married to someone with the last name Cullen, and I see
Wow.
now. It's really fun to get mail from the Cullens.
That's so insane. That's pretty cool though. Like, as a Twihard growing up, being able to like say that you belong in that world, that's like one of the best compliments ever. I gotta say that, like, my brother, who his name is Jacob, he very much did not like Jacob, because he's just like, well, I wouldn't do that. And I'm just like, well, no, you wouldn't. Of course you wouldn't, you know?
You have
You're
to
like, not all Jacobs are the same.
No,
Jacob was like a young little teenager. I have to remember that like teenage boys are stupid. Jacob is a young teenage boy. He's like 2 years younger than them, or like a year younger than them. He's not.
And then Edward's 117.
Yeah.
So.
Also,
okay. It's so funny to me. I love it.
It's really funny, but like that's kind of going into. So I know you're writing a book right now, and when you were writing Dark Radiance, you obviously said Twilight mixed with Hush Hush mixed with Vampire Diaries. Are those the books that inspired you when you wrote that? Or like what all went into creating the story? And like, because we all like have read books and we're like, this would be like, you take your own twist on something that happens in another book and like, this would be an amazing story on its own. Like, what did you use to help facilitate that creativity in writing a book?
I've definitely been the type of reader who loves pulling back the veil of like the supernatural world. So, vampires and witches and like urban fantasy has been and forever will be my love. And I knew I wanted to write that. I knew I didn't want to do vampires because vampires had been so overdone but when I started it. And I was like, witches are just a little bit too like much research for me right now. And I've always loved the idea of fallen angels. They're just really interesting, and there's so much like lore and stuff you can take from like fallen angel stories. Hush Hush, Fallen, Supernatural, the TV show, really showed like different sides of angels and fallen angels and demons. And so I definitely took inspiration from there. I will say the Vampire Diaries characters like Klaus Michelson, Elijah, Damon, Stefan. I took those.
You mean like the best characters from
the
show?
So I will say like Finley, my like the main like originally it was gonna be a love triangle, and then I was like, I hate love triangles, I'm ditching that. But Finley, one of the main guys, is very much reminiscent of Klaus Michelson. He calls Lily like darling in like a condescending way, and like it's just very much that like I'm better than you, but like I'm hot, so it's okay kind of vibe. I love
Klaus Michelson. I was so in love with Joseph Morgan that like when I watched like the originals and stuff, I was so in love with him that like I got a sweatshirt with his face on it that he was selling. I still have it to this day. And it's like it's called like a killer portrait, and he's holding like a picture frame and it says killer portrait, and I'm just like, and it's like as Klaus Michelson, and I'm like, Klaus, I love any character, like the Klaus kind of character, where he's not like, he's like the bad guy, but he's like also still like not the worst bad guy. Like he's
Yeah.
the anti-hero where he does a lot of shitty things.
Yeah,
Really him.
he's kind of like that. Those characters are the ones that like you, for at face value, yeah, they're the bad guy, but then you understand, you get to know them a little bit more, and then you get to understand why the what's the reasons why they act the way they do. And like, well, he's not really bad, he's just kind of, he's got some trauma, he's got
misunderstood.
yes, he's misunderstood. Those are our favorites.
Yes.
He's not really bad, he's just misunderstood.
But
Yeah,
he's a serial killer. Like he's still like murders people.
It's
in Vampire Diaries.
Who has it in Vampire Diaries?
exactly. All of them people.
This is why Matt's the most boring, because he hasn't murdered anybody.
Okay,
So
Matt was, I literally went on live right before this and like was getting ready and stuff, and I literally had like a 20-minute conversation about like the Vampire Diaries and how they were like every season they tried to kill off Bonnie, but they always brought her back because fans were so angry whenever they tried to kill off Bonnie. But they like the writers hated the actress, so they would always try to write her off. And then Ian was like, "I will leave the show if you try to kill her off." So they just play with her and was like, "We'll kill you off, but then you're coming back." And she's like,
I think that's why she was probably my least favorite of the girls. I just didn't like her. My favorite's Caroline, because I am Caroline. It's my mom watched the show and she was like, I raised Caroline, and that's just me. But I always liked like the Catherine Pierce kind of characters. I'm very much the person that I lean more towards the darker side of a character, and I definitely put those into my characters. I didn't want them to be like perfect in any way. That I want them to be flaws, and even if Lily thinks like Asher is perfect, he's not, and that's the thing, is none of them are, obviously, because they're all fallen.
I think
that's good.
Yeah,
I think that's because I feel like the reason why a lot of people hate like the Matt characters of the thing is because they're flat, because they're good people. They're like genuinely good people, and like we all like the darker ones, like being a darker character. Not saying that like you can't have like depth and stuff, but it's a more interesting background when you see the intention behind characters, like actions and stuff, when you know their background and the trauma is.
The trauma's always the sprinkle on top that just makes the cake so much better.
Yeah.
But it's those great characters that like when you're kind of building a world and setting up like things to go in motion, like, right, we want something to be like, a problem has to come up, there has to be a solution to the problem, but then it's like, my brother, he was helping us out with this when we were doing like our world building and magic building, because that's a big thing of
our
me.
witch system, like
our witch system is insane. It's
like
us. It's a lot.
Notes I have.
And like you said, witches requires so much more research, right? And so like as we were like putting this all together, you know, you don't want, as like an author, you don't want your book to end up having plot holes of like, well, why didn't they just do this, right? And so like we were like, let me call in my brother to come in and listen to us. Does this make sense? And we went through everything, and then he was just like, yeah, it makes sense. And then he's just
4-page notes, and the notes to add stuff in.
He was like, but why does your bad guy do this bad thing? And we were kind of stumped for a second, because we're just like, we haven't figured that out. And he's just like, well, you have to figure that out, because every bad guy isn't really a bad guy in his own eyes. And that's how we kind of have to look at each of the morally gray characters. And like with fallen angels, they're all not good because they fell, you know, that's like the whole story kind of lining up. And good characters at face value, yeah, they're fine, but then they're like, you never question what they're going to do, because you know they're always going to do right. But sometimes what's always right isn't what's good for the sake of the group, right?
I also wanted, like, there's an elite council of angels that got to come to Earth in Dark Radiance. So these are like whoever is up there, because I don't really specify because I want everybody to be like, oh, I can believe in this.
Mhm.
They got sent down and they kind of peer in and watch us and report back. But I wanted the good guys to also be bad because
Yeah.
they're good because they believe they're good. They're good because they've been told their whole lives that they've been good. But on the flip side, on our main characters and all the fallen angels, they're the bad ones because they're holding this power and it's like a power dynamic. So I've always liked, characters who are good, but they're bad at the same time and they have those like very powerful ways of being just evil because no one person is fully good.
Yeah.
Like you're willing to do something for someone or for something
Yeah.
bad for any, like it's just how it is.
I feel
in
like
their
also
life.
like the reason, like kind of going off of what Grace is saying, is like the fact that they're willing to do the good and bad. Like they're willing, like they understand both sides where like sometimes you have to be bad. Sometimes you have to go like you have to do the wrong thing in order to make it right or something. I'm not saying that like an eye for an eye kind of thing, but like sometimes like the like right way, the like good side way to go doesn't actually like work out. And so sometimes, yeah, you might have to stab a guy in the heart because he's gonna murder you and if you don't. So
Yeah, and it kind of goes back into like this idea of like when your reader kind of gets the book, you want them to be able to connect with characters. And if you have a perfectly good character that is all good, never does anything bad, is always right, no one's going to be able to connect to that character. Nobody's going to be able to like empathize with him or her and feel like I could be that person. Well, I can't be that person because they're too perfect, but I can be this one who's messed up, who always does the wrong thing, who is not really liked by people, because everybody can kind of relate to that in some shape or form. And that's why when you ask people, well, who do you relate to in whatever book that you're reading, they usually relate to like the darker characters, the ones that are kind of messed up, because everyone can be able to fit into the puzzle piece that is that one character, you know? It's more like a universally, it's I want to say it's like a universal remote where they can connect with any person who's reading this book. And as like an author, you want your characters to be likable. You want your reader to feel connected to the story, and then they end up reading it and wanting to find out what ends up happening, right? So yeah, I love morally gray characters. They're my go-to. I love them.
so kind of to keep this talk going on like writing your book, what was your system for all of this like organization and stuff? Did you have like I have a binder for my own personal book. I have like a binder with like characters, I have a map, I have like descriptions of all the places, I have descriptions of the language, I have descriptions of the currency they use and stuff. So like what did you use for, I mean, for you it's more of like in this world. Sorry, this is a long question,
So
but
you're okay.
I'm actually creating a world, but like what did you use like as a device or system?
So when I first started writing the book, I had like 18 different Google Sheets and I was like, oh, it's fine. I'll be able to find it whenever I want because it's on my Google Drive. Joke's on me, that's a lie. So then I have a specific notebook that is just the Dark Radiance world. So it has all of the characters, all of like their powers, their age, who they're related to, that kind of thing. Um, and then for my other work in progress, I actually have started using my iPad with GoodNotes and created like a digital binder um, of all the characters. And I just kind of created my own little digital character and story binder because I am creating a world with that. It's high fantasy. I'm making something, whereas Dark Radiance is set in our world and it's a little bit easier because you don't have to think about, well, do they have a cell phone or do they not? Like,
Yeah.
or do they have something equivalent to it? And so I've just found that keeping everything in like a binder or a notebook that you can, if you go somewhere and you're writing with it, you can take it with you. And that makes your
Oh
life
yeah.
so much easier because even the other day I was like, is that the last name of a character in Dark Radiance? And I like ran over and I was like, no, it's a different last name. And I just shut the book. But
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because like Maggie and I would have like weekly meetings where we'll like hash out everything and we'll go through everything. And she was like so much better at like just getting everything down on like a Google Doc that we would share, you know, because we don't live in the same, even in the same time zone. So we had to figure out a way to kind of work for us. So we did a Google Doc and we kind of like put all of our ideas from that meeting down. And then I would go into the doc later on and then like have like a master file where we had like world building in this folder, magic in this world, characters in this one, family systems in this one, currency in another one, and
Plot.
location, all of that thing. Because it's a lot when you're writing a story, like even if it's urban fantasy, you know, you still have to kind of, well, how does it tie into like the real world, you know, like how is this magical thing going to fit into this very like normal mundane world? And it's just, it's so much, and it's kind of hard to kind of keep track of for anything, but it kind of fits to whatever type of author that you are. Like if, you know, for you it's that one Good Notes, by the way, I love Good Notes, it's like chef's kiss, perfect. And for me and Maggie, it's good Google Docs for now, And, you know, for someone else, it might be like another app, you know, for our listeners out there who are writing maybe their own books. It's a notebook that you have tucked away in your closet that you pull out and you handwrite everything down. It kind of is fit to whatever works for you and what you feel comfortable with and how you know that you're going to keep track of everything, because you don't want to be one of those authors that like you say something in chapter 3 but then in chapter 25 it's like a completely different thing, you know. You kind of have to keep track of it a little bit.
Yeah.
So for like based off of like our experience for writing, so you kind of talked about how when you weren't defining like God or anything when it came to the higher ups above the angels. So like we kind of did that where instead of we kind of incorporated like our magic system and being able to it to relate to every single religion and stuff. So how did you determine that? Because like I know a lot of like there's a lot of like books that are like there's like Christian fiction where it's like God, good and evil kind of stuff. So how did you determine like how you wanted it to reach a broader audience and stuff?
Yeah, I think in like the first chapter in the story, I think I say like God, but like it's very an overview and then it's never mentioned again because I had like a beta reader ask me like what is their religion, and I just told them like I don't have, like, they're not Catholic, they're not Christian, like they're just mythical creatures. And I definitely, like, in the second book, I think I just defined it a little bit more, and it's a lot more like this might be like they might be something that isn't really like what everyone believes in the world. But like I do mention, like, I mentioned the devil and like Lucifer, like that kind of stuff because he's a fun character to play with. Like it's fun to play with him, but I never wanted someone to read my book and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is really religious." Because although I am like religious, someone else might not be.
Yeah.
And I have read angel books where it's like this is what it is. And I just thought that it's not fun. Like I think Supernatural does a really good job of it, of like playing like kind of poking at it and being like the angels are bad, but like here's God, but he looks like this, and like he's sitting on his couch like eating chips. Like it's not like one defined thing. And
Yeah.
I didn't want a reader to be uncomfortable reading that.
Yeah, I think I know exactly what you mean, because like Maggie asked me this too, like how I wanted to kind of go about it, and I told her that I didn't want to put that aspect into our book, um kind of more for myself, um because, you know, I am religious and Maggie is not, and so it
Right here. So it's very, but I've studied Christian theology and stuff. So like I go to a Catholic school. So like I know like, yeah.
Yeah. And so like it was kind of like that edge of like, did I want to put that part of myself into it and then have readers be completely uncomfortable with it? And we I talk a lot with my brother. My brother is my go-to person about this. I talked with him about it and how would I be able to do it? And he's just like, well, you don't have to be super specific with it. You can just kind of shape it to what you need. Is it essential in this story? Does it need to be there? Or is it kind of like a thing where it's there, but it's not, we're focusing on this corner of the world? And he kind of helped me kind of decide that it didn't need to be explicit in there. And it wasn't like something that I needed to do, but it was kind of like that thing where I was battling with myself. Do I add this in? Do I not add this in? Because all readers are coming from different backgrounds. And so I decided not to. And then that gave me, it kind of opened a doorway to kind of letting the world not be defined by a singular aspect. And then it opened up for us to do magic systems from all different types of world, where one side of the world has this type of magic system and another one has another magic system. And because this is a huge world that is going to be played across all over, not just in like this one little town, for me and Maggie, we're able to play around with it. Like, this area has this lore, this area has that lore, and you get those little people coming in with different backgrounds. So it's something that is accepted but not really delved into.
It's
And
not like defined, like no person is saying they're right, and this is
yeah,
like their own interpretation of how everything is, and they're okay with other people's interpretation.
yeah,
And so we kind of wanted to add that in because I feel like that's necessary. And like, I have read a lot. I mean, I go to a Catholic school, I go to a Jesuit university. So like, I kind of get that like Christian education where I read a lot of books about like Christians and stuff. And I'm like, I don't want that included, but I'm like, well, what if somebody isn't Christian? How would they view something like this? Like, and it's different for every person and stuff. And so like, definitely like her character, her Mireia comes from a different background than Victoria, but kind of just keep this moving on because I feel like we need to ask you more questions. Is how did you publish it? Like, what was the process for publishing your book?
So there is a video on my channel that says I will never self-publish, and I have learned that whenever I say I'll never do something, I end up doing it. I say I never drive a white car, and I drive a white car. So I ended up querying Dark Radiance, and I got some read-throughs, and the agents that came back would say, love the story, it's really well written, great like storyline, great characters, but the angel market is not like, this is not what we're looking for. We're
yeah,
At the time they were looking for witch books. So now, like last year, all of these witch books came out. So for me, I've always been the type of person that's like, if someone isn't going to do it for me, I'm going to do it myself, and I'm going to do it better. And so I just definitely learned everything I could about self-publishing. I watched so many author tube videos. I researched a lot. I became friends with self-published authors, and it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's not, I spent many nights like till 5 a.m. formatting a book. And so I decided where I wanted to publish. I published through Ingram Spark because I wanted hardcovers. And with Ingram Spark, you have to own your own publishing house. I own my own publishing press now. And then from there, I just like did everything on my own. All of the inside of my book is formatted by me. I just did that with Word and then exported it into a PDF and then made it into like a Mobi file for Kindle. And I paid someone to do my cover, and I was really particular about that as well. But if you want to self-publish, it's you have to be able to be like, I'm committed to self-publishing. I'm not gonna like, there's a lot of stigmas on self-publishing where it's like half-assed. And
mm-hmm.
that's because a lot of it is because anyone can upload a book on Kindle like for like Kindle Unlimited and everything like that without like with their own like hand-drawn cover. But if you want to do it and do it like it's mirrored in traditional publishing, um, just know it's a lot of work, but it's so worth it.
Yeah.
Because I have had a lot of control on like my characters and my cover. And so for a first series, I think that's really important for me personally. Um, and later on, I do want to like try to traditionally publish because I think it'll be fun. But I mean, I've gotten to do the same things that traditionally published authors have done. So yeah, I just decided one day that I was done querying.
So, what is the process of querying? I know we hear a lot of authors, but like, is there a website that you go to? Like, I know you're our first author, so we're gonna ask you like,
We're
people
in
are
a
gonna question it. I mean, they're gonna be like, so you hear somebody say querying, and some people are like, well, what does that mean? A lot of
Yeah,
people,
so querying is when you send your book, well, it's like 10 pages and a cover letter pretty much in a very specific format to agents. And these agents will, if they buy your, or not buy your book, if they choose to agent you, they will send out your book once you're done to be bought by like HarperCollins or like a publishing house. To get an agent, you have to go through this rigorous process of querying. And there is a website, I cannot think of it off of the top of my head, but it pretty much shows the agent's wish list. So some agents really want fantasy and they want like dark fantasy, or, you know, they're looking for a vampire book. Whereas others will put that in, I don't want any vampire books. Do not send me them because I will not open them. So you go through this process of creating different cover letters, and it's pretty much kind of like a college application for an agent. There's also querying on Twitter called PitMad, and that is a hashtag that is done, I think 3 times a year, but it might be twice. And you put a little bit like your elevator pitch in there, you hashtag PitMad, and then your followers can retweet it so agents can see it. And if it agents will go through and like and then contact you through that and be like, I want your full read through. It's a lot. A lot of people will go through thousands of queries before they find their agent. But I feel like the agent, like the way agents are reading now is a little bit different than when I was querying. They're definitely more open to different books and they're listening to what readers want.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing because like, and I feel like, you know, as much as like you wouldn't think like this past year how big of an impact it has had on like publishing houses and for them to see the power that readers have, um I feel like we kind of really showed our strength this past year with the book sales, with just content and just pushing out, especially with book talk, you know, that publishing houses actually started seeing like, wow, this is a market that needs to be like pushed on. And I feel like um they're doing a little bit better. Like, granted, they might have heard this year, but then the effects aren't going to trickle out within these next few years.
Because publishing
Yeah.
takes a while. I think a lot of people like they're wondering like, well, where is all this stuff that we've been requesting for a while? And you're like, well, publishing takes a long time. Like, it's not just like you can send it in one day and the next month you're already printing ready to go. It's a year, 2 years, especially if new authors coming out. So I know because we've a lot, like the book talk community especially has requested like a lot more LGBTQ plus books, POC authors, and more representation in books and stuff. And we're not probably going to see that for another year to year and a half, probably, which is
Yeah.
sad to say, but in reality, it's what happens.
You don't hear about like, unless you're following the author or you're on book Twitter, and you see that a book has been bought, because the author will be like, I'm represented by this person and my book was bought by HarperCollins. Normally to get a book on the shelf is about 2 years, and that is being lenient. And that does not include like marketing for the book or anything like that. And I don't think people also realize that a book can be amazing and it can be great, but the publishing houses only have a limited amount of marketing capability.
Yeah, budget.
Yeah, like a budget. And a lot of times authors have to be their own marketers. So things like book talk or book talkers talking about books that they're sent, or a booktuber, a book Twitter, bookstagram, it really does help authors, not just in the sense of like monetary, but just to see that people are enjoying your book and that um you're out there. Also reviews are a really big thing, because Amazon, you have to hit 50 reviews before it like bumps you into like high recommendations under stuff, and Goodreads I think is about the same, 50 reviews. And I don't think people know that. So even like if you have a 4-star review, just leaving that review that's more than an author can like ask for.
Yeah. I mean, I think people don't realize that like it's entertainment, right? And it would not be there. It would not be successful if the readers didn't do their part in like helping out by, giving a good review or talking about it. Word of mouth goes like a long way. And I think people are starting to see, like, especially like our friends who are like big creators, they're realizing like they talk about one book that they really loved, and then it ends up coming back to them like that book is so hard to find because it's not in stores now. That goes like such a long way. And like on TikTok right now, it was the off-campus series that was like taking off. And
I literally had a girl came up to me yesterday. She's like, "Do you have the off-campus series?" Literally 5 minutes before I ordered them for myself, and I was like, "We don't have any in stock." And she's like, "Do you have any El Kennedy?" I was like, "No, we don't have any El Kennedy in stock."
yeah,
I know. Someone over here is convincing me to read them because I've heard they're about hockey boys, and I am hockey queen over here.
I see your story.
Yes.
Read them. I have a review on my TikTok page about them. I talk about the Briar U, the Fulton U, the Off Campus, and the Kings of Rittenhouse, which are all like hockey players that.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you haven't read it, because I've seen you at hockey games and I'm like, of course she's read it.
Oh,
You
yeah.
haven't read it?
No, I haven't read it. I'm at every hockey game determined to marry one of those boys. I'm like,
Take me with you. Take me with you.
Oh, 100%. When hockey season comes back, I will take anyone to any city hockey game. It's fun because, especially like the hockey community is small. I'm gonna go on a tangent, but and so they learn who you are, like the players and like everyone in the hockey community learn who you are. So when I go to games, I'm like, oh, and now I'm friends with like a couple of like the girlfriends, and it's fun to be able to be in that world. And so to hear like people are reading hockey romance, I'm like, wait, this is a thing? Like, because I've never been a romance reader. I've always like very much YA. And
me
then
neither.
I got thrown into like the dark romance section, and I was like, oh, where am I? Like, where am I? Like navigating through Den of Vipers, I was like, where am I?
Oh gosh, yeah. But it's crazy because like I was in a huge reading slump for about a month, 2 months, and then like Maggie and like a couple of other friends had been talking about the series for so long, and I was just like, you know what? I think that some spice is going to be what takes me out of this. And so I did it, and I usually take about a week on a book, no matter how long it is. That's just usually how long I usually take. And so I finished the first book in a day, and like 24 hours. The second book, like a day and maybe like a couple hours. The third one right after. I had to pump the brakes on the last one because I'm like, this has been a lot. Let me take a break. but they're so easy to read. Let me brag about them a little bit from somebody who has never read them before and who doesn't really read romance, contemporary romance. I like my fantasy, I like my magic, I like my daggers, okay? But as like this was like my first contemporary in years, and I fell in love. I fell in love with them. I thought it was just going to be spicy sports romance, but no, sprinkle in some trauma in there, sprinkle in some like daddy issues, sprinkle in some like it's it's a lot, okay? It's
So
good.
yeah, I'd like to say that like off campus, if you want to get into like the sports romance, I think I think that's where like Grace will probably go, is sports romance when it comes to that kind of romance genre, versus like you see me and I go into like the reverse harem, the darker side. But I know Grace won't like that. And so I don't recommend those books for her, but I know she'll love like the hockey. So like I totally am gonna make her read like the Briar U series, and then the Kings of Rittenhouse, and then the
Yeah.
Fulton U series, because those are exactly almost like the off campus. But that's what I recommend if you're wanting to get into smut and you're wanting to just have a little more light. Because I read the first off campus series in 2 days. I read all 4 books in 2 days. I didn't do anything for like a whole week. I had like a whole week off for like spring break. We just didn't have classes. Um, and I read them all, and I think that's what kind of got me back into like the love of romance books and stuff, is because like I was reading a lot of YA. I've read a lot of YA for the past year and stuff, and it gets tedious, and it's like you want more, especially, and you don't want it from the YA books. You want it from people your age, and so it helps when these characters are your age and they're falling in your love, and you're like, oh, I can live vicariously through you. Cheers. And
Yeah.
so it's a great series to start off with.
I definitely was the type of reader who was nervous to like go into that up until like this year. And then this is like, I feel like it's so lame to say, but like I read Sarah J. Maas and I was like, oh, okay. Like I kind of like that. And then I went into like different like romance books. I read one of my friends' paranormal romance, and I started to get like more into it. But I'm the type of reader that I forget, like even when I'm reading a YA, I forget the ages of the characters because I am the main character. I don't care what they look like, who they are. They don't have red hair. I'm the main character. Like it's me in the book. So I definitely feel like it filled like a different part of what I like to read, but I will always be like a YA fan. I can't get away from it because it's so fast paced. Yeah, most
YA is
addiction.
it's something special about YA. I don't think I'll ever be able to truly leave YA behind because it's always just been something of a comfort. Like there are things that I still struggle with, you know, on my own, and that these YA readers are going through, you know. I fear if I get more into romance that I'm going to be reading about these girls who are my age and who have all of these things going for them, and I'm still not there, you know? So when I'm reading YA, it's just like, girl, same.
Yeah,
I don't.
and if I want to write YA, I have to read YA. I have to
Oh, yeah.
be like I loved when a mom would come into the bookstore and be like, she doesn't read a lot, but she has to read for school. What do you recommend? And my go-to question is, what do you like to watch on TV? Or what
Mhm.
movies do you like? And then I would go from there. And it was just something that there's something for everyone in YA. And I could always find a book that I was liking. I will say I am like a heavy fantasy reader. I don't read contemporary a lot. Like I have a whole shelf over there that's contemporary that I haven't read. I just buy them because I'm like, oh, this looks cute, and then
Covers are cute.
Yep.
Covers are really
Covers
cute.
are so cute.
Especially now, contemporary romance, even in adult contemporary romance. Let me grab. I have like One Last Stop, which is Casey McQuinston's new book.
mhm,
I got it as because booksellers get like arcs and stuff. Well, we just
yeah,
got the book. They just gave us the book, and it's not supposed to come out to a while now. And I got it, and I was like,
you took it from the break room and ran. That was me.
no, like my mom like looked at it, and she was like, I was like, this isn't an arc, because it like arcs have like the advanced reader copies or like unedited version. Nope. nothing. It's like the book. And I was like, and the receiving guy like gave it to me. He like called me. He's like, Maggie, on the like walk. He's like, Maggie, I need you to come to the back for me. And I'm like, Justin, this is, well, he did it through somebody else. So they're like, Justin needs you in the back right now, Maggie. And I'm like, what did I do? I was like, did I shelve something wrong? Because I know I didn't, because I'm the only one who does YA and romance. And then I got back there and he's like, I have something for you and I think you'll really enjoy it. And I'm like, okay. And then he like lays it out and I'm like,
it was like angel singing, like spotlight.
Oh, I have it right here. Let me grab it. So like Harley Quinn sent me like the arc for Talk Bookish to me.
Yeah.
And so you can see it says like the uncorrected proof not for sale, and it has like the on sale date here. This just
Are they not coming out with hardcovers with that? I wonder if that was supposed to be an arc and they were like, I'm just not gonna put the arc thing on there.
Yeah, I know she does. Like a lot of romance authors come out with just paperback. Harley Quinn does it a lot. St. Martin's does it a lot for their romance. It's just
that's true.
And a lot of like contemporary romance, I'm like looking at my thing. It's just for like romances, you don't really
like
covers.
Jennifer L. Armentrout's too. Yeah. All of her books were in paperback until I went to the store to buy the new one, and they were all in hardcover. And I was like, eye twitching. I was like, do I need them all in hardcover? I don't think I do, but
it's $30 for hardcover, and like I didn't realize it until I saw something on TikTok. But like, there's not even foiling on it or anything. Like, just a hardcover book, and I was like, why is this? Like the book itself isn't pretty. Like I got the special editions of the Fairy Loot and Bookish box. Those are like my nice hardcover ones, and then those ones are for me to destroy. So
yeah, well, and it's like they're not like it. There wasn't even a paperback. Well, there was a paperback option on Amazon, but I wanted it that day. So, and I was in Barnes and Noble at that time. So I don't know why, but yeah, I would do that. I would go into the back to receiving at like 7 a.m. from the last night, and I'd be like, so did we get any like ARC stuff? And they're like, yeah, take this to the office. And me and my coworker would sit there and open them and be the first ones to be like opening them. I got Chain of Gold when it first came out. But I was nice and I brought it back for my other coworker to read, and then we passed it around. I wasn't always that nice. I would like run with them out the store.
A lot of
character development.
Yeah. A lot of us are waiting to read this, so the fact that like Justin thought of me first was really nice, and I was like, Justin, thank you so much.
And you're like, thank you.
He's like,
yeah.
Okay.
But it's crazy because like the contemporary books have such pretty covers, right? But the fantasy ones, they call to me. I don't know what I'm a big fantasy person too. I need some magic. I don't need real world. I need some magic. I need some.
Well, I don't watch like I was never a Gilmore Girls girl. I was never a Gossip Girl. I'm in Vampire Diaries and like Supernatural. Like I just won't watch them. I think the only like contemporary like high school thing I watched was Pretty Little Liars, and I read the books before that. So it was like.
Yeah, I'm watching Gossip Girl right now, but I was also like the originals, Vampire Diaries, Supernatural.
Teen Wolf was it. I was literally watching Teen Wolf an hour ago.
An
hour ago, I was watching Teen Wolf. It's a favorite show.
My dating profile literally says, if it's not Styles and Lydia romance, I don't want it. And people will ask me what that is, and I'm like, we can't be friends, and I'll just like go to the next person.
Dude, oh my gosh, Styles Stilinski is
the love of my life.
Dylan O'Brien in general, but Styles Stilinski has like, he's just a perfect character. I think everyone loves him, and people like who don't know anything about Teen Wolf are just like, but you know, he's not even like the good looking one. But then it's just
gets there.
Just watch it. Look, something about Boyd Styles just
it's different.
It's different.
It was like the third
character. It's the funny side character. That's what it is. He's funny. He's the side character. He's also a little awkward too, but then he like grows out of the awkwardness. So like that shift where you
that season 3 haircut was.
They all glowed up in season 3.
Season 3 was like it.
season 3 is my favorite season, even though it broke me. Like, I laid on the bathroom floor for like 4 hours and didn't go to school the next day because of that.
Wasn't somebody
And
die in season 3?
yeah, someone dies.
I think I know.
And
It's like the main love interest, right? She dies.
yeah, she has the same initials as me, but she was not my favorite. I was like, sorry. She spelled her name the same as me, and I was like, sorry, I'm a Lydia girl. Like, my
Yeah.
best friend would like call me, like, be like, you're Lydia. And I was like, character development. I haven't made the TikTok, but I really want to make a TikTok that's like, I'm not the main character. I'm the intelligent, blunt, but caring best friend. And it's just like Lydia, Spencer Hastings, like
Oh my,
all of those
like
characters.
literally her from like season 1 to like to even just to season 3, the development is like insane.
Yeah.
We
I
love
was always wondering if she was like gonna like continue into the series, because it really felt like she was just gonna be like Lydia and then they were gonna like kick her off. But yeah, I definitely have always envisioned my Lily as like Holland Roden, like
Mhm.
just that is her, and I love that show. But I've never been a contemporary person. I watch Grey's Anatomy. I do watch that, but
Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
yeah, I don't know if I can continue on though, because like they've
Um,
killed off and like taken off all my favorite characters,
I thought
and they
that
just renewed after season 18. Like, there's gonna be more after season 18. I'm like, just end it.
that's it.
and
It's
it's
been, yeah. I don't watch past, I think, season 9. I don't watch past that.
Yeah,
Every
my
time I get there, I like switch to a new show or like start over. I don't go past that.
I don't know what's yeah, my first car was named Lexi and my new car is named Stallone, so we can tell who my favorite characters were. But
they were such good characters.
They are the embodiment of that song. If we had 5 more minutes.
literally me just crying right now.
Oh my gosh.
Stallone.
Please.
I was like rewatching it because I convinced my best friend to watch it for the first time, and they were watching it, and she was literally like, I was like, why did I like Derek? Like, why did I like? He's a jerk.
Derek's a bitch. Derek was a bitch. The fact that like when he broke up with Meredith and then he was getting all mad because she was sleeping with other dudes and stuff, and he literally like
You don't get to
Danger.
dictate how I put myself back together.
Yeah,
You don't get to call me a whore. I love that speech. It's just like, yes.
is iconic. It's iconic.
yeah. I could never. I like was always like Derek and Meredith, but now I look at them and I'm like, oh gosh, if I read this in a book, I'd be like, what?
What
Why
are
are
you
we?
doing?
Leave him. Yeah.
It's like, no, honey, no. This is not what we're doing. This is not.
And then we have
it.
Christina over here who's just like heart surgery and Owen.
Christina goes through a lot.
Oh,
She's just losing her shoe and asking to be sedated, and I feel that.
Felt that. Her whole panic attacks. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The
Well, and she like just her bedside manner. That's if I was ever to be in like a medical field, that's me. I'm just really blunt. I'm like, oh, your bone's sticking out of your leg. Rub some dirt on it. It's fine.
It's fine. Get up. You're good. It
Yeah.
doesn't even hurt that bad.
Yeah, you're fine.
I love Grey's Anatomy. I feel like everyone must have at least watched a couple. It's funny because like I remember when I started watching it because I had a physiology and anatomy teacher in high school, and on days that our class would finish up our work, she'd be like, okay, we're gonna watch an episode of Grey's Anatomy. And I was just like, what's this? Okay. And then we would watch episodes, but it wouldn't be like the drama filled episodes. It was be the episodes with like intense, like fun procedures.
Okay.
You know, like I think one of the episodes that we watched was the one where like the heart was attached to a pump outside. And that was like a really cool one that we watched. But then my then boyfriend in high school and I were like, let's watch the whole thing. And I remember he and I actually started watching this show together. And it was funny because like when we broke up, like a couple months after, he's just like, hey, are you still watching that show? And I was just like, dude, I'm like on season 9 now. I'm like way ahead.
Where are you?
Yeah. I was just like, you thought I was gonna stop for you? No. But it's always a funny thing that I think back to, especially with that show. Certain shows, they're too good to stop. To a certain point, because I won't go past 9, but
Yeah.
That's me with Supernatural.
Yeah,
I've rewatched it.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I always never really watched like a Grey's Anatomy. I just never could keep up with it. I've never watched like the Good Girl or whatever stuff like that. But I always watched like the high fantasy like series and stuff like The Witcher, Game of Thrones. I always watched those ones, or like the action, like more action, because I never was really cared about, oh, it's just a love story kind of thing, like New Girl. I never watched that. I know Grace watched that, but
Love New Girl.
I think the reason why I got into contemporary romance is because I found these authors on TikTok called Kennedy Fox, and I read their series, and it's a smutty series, and it's with cowboys, and so of course, being from Texas, I had to. And that, I think that really started was it's from TikTok. Like the TikTok is a reason why I like saw it, and I saw the first page, and I was like, this looks interesting. It was such a graphic first page, but it hooked me in, and I was like, well, okay, now I'm going to start reading it. And then like our mutual friend Kate reads a lot of like romance ones too, and whatever she reads I read. So
Yeah. I'm more of like the person that like I'll read contemporary every now and then to like palette cleanse between worlds, because I don't want fantasy worlds to mix up. That's usually where I am. And it's just kind of like a palette cleanser between certain fantasy worlds. I actually can do multiple fantasy worlds in one, but I do every now and then need a palette cleanser to kind of get me away from certain tropes that I know are inevitable, but just to kind of switch it up sometimes.
I should have done that. Oh, go ahead.
Speaking of tropes, what's your top 3 tropes?
To read or to write?
We'll do to write first.
Okay.
And then we'll do to read later.
Okay, top 3. In no particular order, because I kind of love them all.
Okay.
Enemies to Lovers, The Forbidden Love, and then this one's hard. Star-crossed lovers, but make it tragic.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I think there was a TV show called like Star-Crossed or something, and it was like a star-crossed lover. Did y'all ever see that TV show? And it was like 1 season, and I waited for years for the second season to come out. They canceled it, and I was so sad. But it was like a forbidden, like a star-crossed lovers. I think it was called Star-crossed.
I know what show you're talking about. I never got to watch it.
Let me look it up real quick.
But yes, the show. I love that. I love star-crossed lovers. Enemies to lovers too. It's complex, and you think it's very simple, like, well, they could just be together. Their families or whatever reason they can't be together is BS, right? But then it's like, but is it? Yeah. Is it? Like, no.
I am definitely the type of person that I'm like, my characters broke my heart first, so now I'm gonna break your heart.
Oh, and yeah.
I definitely, the other night when I finished the second novella, cried on the floor, and I was like, I'm sorry.
Like, oh, that's like the worst thing, because it's just like, you know, you will, as like readers, will like question our authors and be like, please tell us this is gonna happen, don't tell us that this is gonna happen. And then like, I bet like sitting in the author's chair, you're just like, oh, you have no idea the pain that will come soon your way.
Oh my God. I don't know when stuff is gonna happen, and I'll just be sitting there typing, and then I'm like, and just sit there for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, because your characters like feel like you. Like in our book, we have a certain thing happen to a character of ours, and like when we were talking about it for the first time, and we were just like, you know what, I came up to Maggie and I was just like, look,
we need this to happen. It has to happen.
This needs to happen. This needs
to break their hearts. And I was like,
and we agreed, but it was like, do we have to? We have to. No, we don't, but we need to. And it's just kind of like those things of just like, the story goes, it kind of evolves on its own, and it was just one of those things where like, oh, our readers are gonna hate us for this, but
Yeah, I also get like a little bit of a sick satisfaction knowing I'm gonna hurt the readers. I'm like, I'm sorry, but like I want to be like a fly on the wall when you're reading that, and when you like chuck the book across the thing and be like, because that's just like it's sometimes the twists are so like they're so good that you just are like, I need to know what you thought about that.
yeah,
me with my best friend. When I said there's something, I'm like, so what do you think about that part? And then she hates me for like 3 hours.
oh my God, I wish like it was a thing that like readers could, as they're reading it, could like live react to it and like send it to the author during those scenes, just so that we can get like that satisfied like
Starts a platform for that because I want it. It's my own selfish reason, but that's why I love like reading blogs or even like reading live on book talk now. I love it because something will happen and you just see the person react and you're like, I know what part you're at. Like, I
yes.
know. Yeah.
There was this part, I was sending reactions to Tish and to Maggie off the from the off campus series, and I sent her Tish, the book thief, I sent her a voice recording of me crying. And I was like, what happened now? Why is this happening? And she sent me her voice recording back, and she's just like, the second that I opened up this voice memo, I knew exactly the part that you were at.
I
like
both I think I was at, no, I don't remember. I think I was at work or like studying or something, and I like looked at it, and then like I saw Tish's text, and I was like, oh, what's happening? And then I like hit it, and I was like, oh, I know what part of the book she's on. And it was like, oh, she's on that part.
Yeah.
Or like when you left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the best.
I'm not a big book crier until I'm at the end of the book. Like I cried hardcore when I finished the Throne of Glass series. Like I was like, wait, I don't want them. I need them. Come back. I need you back. Like I need the characters back. But I think the last book I cried in was The Crown of Gilded Bones. I cried twice
Me
in
too.
that book.
I cried too. I'm a big crier.
Grace is a really good crier. So
yeah, I don't know. I've always wished I was like a big like crier in books or like TV, but I apparently have no soul and no emotions, that I'm just like stoic.
yeah,
Like
so
everyone will be crying in The Fault in Our Stars. Everyone was crying in the movie theater, and I was just sitting there blank faced. And my best friend was like, "What is wrong with you? Who hurt you?" And
yeah, but did you cry in Endgame? Did you watch Avengers Endgame?
Yes. I like, it took me a moment. I did not cry at the end. I cried over a different character who's getting her own TV show. That's all I'll say.
Oh yeah. I cried then too. I did. I cried
I
then.
also was like sitting next to my father, and so I was like, are you crying? And I was like, no. I'm fine.
I was talking during Marvel's Endgame, I sobbed most of the movie, to the point where like my stupid ex-boyfriend was just, after the movie, he's just like, you're crying over a stupid, and I'm like, you know what, shut up, because you have not been waiting 10 years for this movie. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I am not going to deny that that was one of the reasons I broke up with him, but I'm gonna just leave that at that.
Yeah, so
a valid reason.
I started not crying as much when I read books. Like when I first started reading, I cried a lot, but now I don't. But like after, when I look at fan art, so like Song of Achilles, if I look at fan art, that breaks me. That breaks me. But like reading the book, I was okay. 5 hours later was when I was not okay. That broke me. 5 hours later, looking at fan art broke me.
Yeah, the end of Endgame, I just felt dead inside.
Yeah.
And like the last movie that made me feel that way was It Chapter 2. So like weird comparison, but like,
yeah, I can see you don't have a soul.
Yeah. I just am like dark and twisty inside.
Yeah.
But like I'm like the weird one that will cry over like the little things, like the little moments in movies or things. But most of the time I just get angry. Like, I just get angry and then I just feel nothing and I sit there looking like a serial killer. People are like,
That's
Oh
like
yeah.
when I read like smut. Like I'll be like, there'll be like a funny part where it's like laugh, and I'll be like, oh, haha, and then I'm like reading like a really like spicy scene, and I'm just like, I literally like would
So
roll
okay.
my eyes one time. I was like sitting and I was reading, and I was like, and then my like coworker was like, we were on break, and I like sighed. I was like. And then she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What are you reading that it's making you so angry?" And I was like, I looked at her and go, "I'm reading a sex scene." And she went, "I don't think that's how you're supposed to react to those." And I was like, I am keeping myself calm. This is how I read smut in front of my roommates, in front of my sister, in front of my parents.
Oh, yeah.
I think, yeah, I think especially as like an early reader, I would read in like middle school. I would put my textbook that we were supposed to be reading and I'd put my book on there. And so I'd have to keep my like face, like, I can't be like
Right.
fangirling over Edward when I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be reading about World War II. Like, that's just not how it's supposed to be. So I think I trained myself to be like emotionless when you're reading. Like,
Oh yeah.
no one will know what you're reading.
I'm a big reactor. I love sending reactions. I love looking at reactions too. I don't know. It just for me makes it more fun because then when I think back on the book, I think about the reactions or the emotions that I felt at the time. And that just makes it more like makes it better for me. But then there are certain times where I'm like reading a certain spot and I can't go anywhere and I just have to zone it in and feel without a face, but I can't really do that too much, which is very funny because like when I have like a normal face in like when I'm walking around, people say I have like a RBF, a
Resting
resting
face.
Me too.
face. And so you would think like hiding my emotions when I'm reading intense like emotional scenes or like spicy scenes or just like these moments with incredible angst that I'd be able to like hold it in. But no, I feel everything.
I
It's the
feel like
best.
I react more when I am listening to an audiobook. Like, I don't know what it is, but I will be like listening to an audiobook and I'll be like, oh, no, she didn't. My mom will be like,
Yes.
who are you talking to? I'm like, I'm listening to an audiobook. But
Yes. I
when I'm
love
like reading
audiobooks.
something, yeah,
Yes.
no. I
Audiobooks are the best.
I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Me too. What's
Yeah.
your favorite audiobook?
My favorite audiobook? I really liked the Bloodline series audiobooks. I
Hmm.
like the narrators and stuff, like made it really good, but I haven't listened to it in a really long time. The Illuminate Files audiobooks, I just remember them being really well produced.
Those, I think that is the most well produced audiobook I've
Yeah.
ever listened to, is because it's like a movie experience.
Yeah, which makes sense because of the way the book is formatted.
Yeah.
But I remember
I've
I
been able to
listened to
read the book
those.
without them. If I would not be able to look at those pages and been, I would have been like, what?
Yeah, I listened to the audiobook after I read the first book. But I read the first book and the second book in one sitting after I got them from Christmas. And I was like, okay, read my new books and thinking I'm gonna read like 20 pages.
No,
Those
fast.
were really good.
They were. It was a fast read, so it was like
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
through 100 pages in an hour. It's that kind
Mhm.
of thing, especially when listening to the audiobook.
Yeah. I haven't finished the series, but
Yeah.
what's new with me? I will That's the problem. I'll read the first couple books in a series and then the next one doesn't come out for a year. And if it's not like something I'm really invested in or people are really talking about, I forget about it until I see it on the shelf and then I'll buy it and then I'll be like, I have to read the whole series again to remember what happened. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought
That's
that.
why I'm a big believer in binge reading, where I'll just binge the entire series. That's why I didn't read Throne of Glass right away.
Yeah.
That's reason.
I binge read
Oh,
it, read it in a week. So
Oh yeah. I read that. I listened to the audiobooks and I read it and
oh, wow.
it was
I'm taking a break from Throne of Glass. because of my reading slump. It hit a big wall, and
Because you tried to read Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms at the same time, and I don't.
that's not why. That's not why. No, no,
Me not
no.
reading Tower of Dawn because I just don't care about Kale enough.
I didn't know that Tower of Dawn was just Kale's book. I did not know that at all. So when I started reading, I was like waiting for like Aylin's chapters to come up, and I'm like halfway through the book, and I'm like, where is her? I was like, where's my Rowan? Where's my husband? I'm like,
Yeah.
I need my tall, sexy man, and then it was like not there, and I was like, I like finished the book, and then I looked, and I was like, this says nothing about Aylin on the back. Like,
Yeah, everyone was like, read it for Irene, like read it for her. And I was like, I don't care about Kale. I don't care about anything he has to say, so I'm not gonna read it. I'll meet her later. But yeah. I also haven't read Assassin's Blade, so
I did read Assassin's Blade, so I did get that in.
I don't want to break my heart.
It broke my heart. It did. But no, the reason why I stopped was because we had done those 6-hour episodes of Akosif, and for the podcast we did a 3-part series on Akosif, like, and we didn't even talk, we missed a lot of things that we wanted to talk about. And I had just read We Hunt the Flame, and it was a lot, and I needed to take a break. But I do keep this in your heart, Maggie. I do dream about Rowan and Aylin and wondering what is going on. I do dream and think about these characters, and that's how I know that I'm going to love characters or a series, is if when the book is put away and it's like the first book and I still have to continue the series, if I continue to think about them later on, like the characters become real to me, like they're living, they're doing these things. And that's how you can kind of tell what makes a good author, is like if the characters have their own being, they feel like real people, like real characters, like they feel like they literally pop off the screen. And like that's how you know that you made even as an author, like you made someone that was like really well rounded. And especially if you can take out the main character and the rest of the characters still thriving on their own, because like I love that sense of like more characters around and them having their own stories, you know? So I do want to finish. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to finish Throne of Glass. Because the characters mean that much to me.
Yeah,
I believe.
I totally understand. I like to call my time with Sarah J. Maas a Sarah J. Maas blackout, because I read all of ACOTAR and then went straight into Throne of Glass. I did not stop. It was like 3 weeks of just like, ah! And so because of that, I haven't read Crescent City. And everyone talks about that one. And I know like about Bryce and Hunt, and I'm just like, I don't know if I can take any more Sarah J. Maas right now, because then I read Akosif, and yeah, it was a lot. And I'm still like hung up on Akosif and dream about that story all the time. I'm like,
oh yeah.
For me, I read Throne of Glass first, and then I read ACOTAR, and then I read Crescent City, and I did it in like a week and a half. I read almost all of her books in a week and a half. It was so crazy. It was right when Corona hit, so like we had like two weeks of spring break basically. So I wasn't doing anything but reading.
Back when COVID was only a quick spring break.
Oh yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's when I started reading all of her books as well. And I don't know. I like have a really, I think because I read ACOTAR first, I have like a really like loving sense to that book series. But I did cry at the end of Throne of Glass, like sobbing at 3 a.m.
But that ending, I'm not going to spoil it for Grace, but you know what happens to some people in the end, and that breaks you. Like it
wasn't even that. It was just that I was losing friends. That I was like, I wasn't ready to let go of Aylin. and like all of them.
I have a photo of Rowan. I have Rowan Shrine. I have Rowan candles.
It's like literally right behind you.
That's Rowan.
Yeah.
That's Rowan.
I do wish we got certain characters more in the books. And I think that's what I was sad about. Because my favorite character, I do love Aelin. She's great. But my favorite character is Lysandra. I love her. And I wish we got more.
Yeah.
But
Well, kind of on that, time for one more question, one more author-centered question. In your books, either Dark Radiance or your current project, do you have characters, side characters that you feel more invested in and that you kind of wish that you could do a spin-off series on that one character?
yes. So with Dark Radiance, Dark Radiance is first, and then there's a 1.5 book, and that is before Dark Radiance. It's right before like Lily comes into existence, and that it follows two novellas, and it follows Aspen and Claire and their storylines. And then there's book 2. I absolutely love Claire. She like kind of knocked Lily down a little bit, and I was like, I love this girl so much because she is definitely like the like human in the craziness. Like she doesn't have powers, she doesn't have anything, but she's thrown into this world and they just expect her to like survive. And whereas Lily does have like powers and she can kind of protect herself. So I think I love Claire, and I won't give any spoilers away, but she is definitely one that I would have loved to dive in more than just 130 pages of a novella, because I think she's very interesting. I love Aspen's story, but we get to see Aspen all the time, so
yeah, I feel that because like as we were plotting out characters and things for our book, there are definitely, like you said earlier in the podcast, like your characters become like real life people. And like it was funny because like when we first started like plotting everything out and building and constructing everybody, Maggie and I would talk about how we would have these moments where we could picture the character walking into our rooms and having a conversation with us, or like how they would go into a coffee shop, or how they would do this or how they would do that. And like that's how you know that you created a really good character, is that you can see them thriving separate from what you put down on paper, and you end up falling in love with certain characters that you did not expect to love as much as you do, you know?
yes. When I write in a very, I know Victoria Avia writes like this because I actually talked to her about it at a book signing. She writes where it's like she's seeing a screen. So it's pretty much like she's watching the movie, and that's how I write. So music is really a big thing for me because I like a score with my movies, like most people do. And so when I'm writing, I see all of this happening, and it's kind of like, it feels very much like a deja vu moment where I'm just standing there watching all of this happen, and then I'm telling the story years later.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that it's, your characters become like your own little children, and your babies who maybe you don't want to kill off, but you do kill some of them off.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm sorry, but like you can stick around still.
Yeah. It's the ones that you don't want to, but you have to. You were brought into this world for a reason. Now you have to fulfill that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely that thing. So I think we're kind of out of time now. It's been quite a while.
I have to go. I have to finish this book. Almost done. It's I don't know why I have to add this in. So I literally saw this at work on Sunday. I saw it at work and I was like, oh, I didn't realize they have an English version now. And I was like, it was the only one there.
365 days.
Oh, is that the Netflix series?
Yes, the TV.
Well, the movie, yeah.
Movie.
It's the movie, and it just came out May it got copyrighted in May 2021, so it's like brand new like translation of it. And I saw it, and so I just posted a TikTok. I like took the video yesterday, and like I bought it yesterday, and I posted the TikTok, and looking at it now, and it's at 60K views, and I'm like, wasn't supposed to be like that. And people are like, tell me what you think, and I'm like, I gotta finish this. And I started today at 11, and I'm here, so I have to like go finish this, and it's probably gonna be like midnight when I'm like filming like my review video, and I'm like, this is trash, do not get it.
Is it trash because of the content or because of the translation didn't translate right? I always wonder with
I'm gonna do an in-depth on my booktube. I'm gonna do it in-depth, but it's not just the translation, but a lot of like plot. There's a lot of like a character says one thing and then they do the exact opposite, or like character is like, oh, I don't drink often, but then like I mark every time they drink in the book, and it's like they were becoming alcoholic. So
I always wonder with translations how it translates, because like maybe in our terms, like, oh yeah, I don't drink often, that makes sense, and the translator's just translating it, but then the author didn't mean it that way, but they don't read English, so they can't
in Europe they drink often, like drinking is a regular thing compared to how it is in the US.
Yeah.
But I think it's also like the intimate scenes. There are a couple descriptive words that I was talking on my live with a couple of people who came on, and I was like, I think they need to have like a writer, like an English writer, not just a translator, but like an English writer, rewrite it for the American audience, because I don't think like even the Polish audience who comment on are like, I'm so sorry you're reading this.
Okay.
They were like, I think it needed the nuances that American society has, and that's why I don't think it's a good book to read in English, because you don't get the nuances of what it is in Polish versus in English. A lot of some of the descriptive words for a man's other regions is like very interesting, and you're like, okay. It just, I think the translation just doesn't, I don't get that feeling of the intimacy scenes versus like in the movie, and you're like, oh la la. One for
I'm
this
like, gotta go watch the movie now.
Yeah.
Right.
This one I kind of like was just reading the intimacy scenes and then marking them with my orange tab and moving on. It wasn't anything special. I just So I'm gonna have a whole video. I'm gonna do like 3-part review series on TikTok, and then a full in-depth video, because there's also issues with what Massimo does in this book, and I'm like, sir, you act like you're the consent king, but you are not the consent king.
Oh yeah. And then you'll finish it just in time for part 2 to come out.
I'm gonna finish this tonight, so yeah. When is part 2 coming out?
I think it's coming out later this year.
I think that's why they translated this to English now, because this second translation for book 2 comes out in December. So
yeah. All right. Well, Allison, thank you for coming. Do you want to do a quick blurb for your book to get it to our listeners?
Okay, hold on. Let me. Dark Radiance. Liliana goes to a strange small town called Idlewood, where she realizes that her bedtime stories are all coming true, and you should have never trusted them. And she finds out that she is the main reason for the war between fallen angels and angels. That is Dark Radiance in my elevator pitch.
Oh wow.
I love that. That's so amazing. Good. So where can our listeners pick up your book?
So it's sold at on all major online retailers. So Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Amazon. If you want signed copies, they're on my website, which is just AllisonAldridge.com. But yeah, you pretty much can find it anywhere, because Ingram does distribute it everywhere. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, so make sure our listeners, make sure that you guys pick up our lovely friend's book, and make sure you guys give her a review and tell her how great you love her book. And thank you for coming on. We had such a good time.
I had a great time too.
It's so late now. I was like, it's like 10 p.m. for me, and I'm like, I still gotta read. I gotta like I'm gonna like go like this while I'm reading to like stay awake.
Content.
I have work in the morning, so I'm like, I gotta read before I go to a bookstore. I thought I would read while I was at a bookstore. No, you do
No.
not have time to read when working at a bookstore.
The movies lied to us.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
yes,
movies
they
lie.
did.
I think at a smaller bookstore, maybe. Like I've seen ones where I've walked into and I see them reading, but that's because they're like a small indie bookstore, and so it's like they don't have as much traffic as like Barnes and Noble. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
well,
Well,
thank you
guys.
guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye, guys.